Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's ReGenAg Chat. Tonight, we're going to be talking pigs and all various things. Thank you very much to Nick and John Francis who have joined us. But just before we start, I will allow Nick to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Nick Renson and I'm part of the Carbon Calling gang, and we farm up near Penrith in Cumbria.
And
that's me, Liz.
And what have you been doing this week, or since? Well, no, been 2 months since the last one.
2 months. I've been to the seaside. I've tried
Holiday.
I've tried to paddleboard. Not pretty. But on the farm, our glamping is now up and running at long last, on a minute scale, and it's been good. I've been cleaning a lot, changing a lot of beds. But the one thing I wanted to talk about that, and tonight we're going to be talking about food, and this kind of dovetails into that. But most of our glamping guests have been vegetarian or vegan, and they've been great. I'll take anything, you know, it's all good. But what's interesting is they come and stay on a farm and they're really interested in the farm, but generally to save the world, they've gone vegan or vegetarian. And then when you start having the conversation about them, particularly about the kind of farming that we're doing, they're just completely unaware of it, but they are genuinely really interested. And I think it kind of worries me that they're all coming up from London and they're all don't want to eat meat. Generally, that's a very huge generalization, but it just is a bit of a worry. And they're all quite young and they just think meat is bad. And I think we've got to talk about it's what is it? Do you say this? The cow? It's not the cow, it's the how. And I think that is a big thing. And yeah, so that's really kind of, I want to think about food a lot at the minute, and good food. And the other thing, this is completely off the wall, but I've been having cold showers and they are a revelation. So you have your normal shower. Yeah, you have your normal shower, and then you try and do, well, I try and do a minute in a freezing cold shower.
Oh.
Well, you Google it. It's really good for you. You come out and you absolutely feel amazing. Anyway, that's a bit of a random sideline, but try it. Don't knock it till you tried it.
What is it meant to do wonders for?
Well, it does slightly make you hyperventilate slightly, like that. And then I think it just kind of gives you a bit of a reset. And you come out and you just feel really good.
What time of day?
First thing in the morning. I don't think you probably do it before you went to bed.
Oh.
So try it. Liz, just try it.
I'll try it. Try anything once. So just to go back to your guests. So what's their decision about coming to a farm then, if they're not necessarily pro-British farming? Or livestock farming, sorry.
Livestock farming. I think they like the countryside. What they love is, because at the minute they're just one couple in the middle of a field with no one else around them. Like they can't see anyone else. It's just total solitude, and they love that. Some of them just don't come out at all. They just stay there, and they just love the tweety birds and all that kind of stuff. But it's so they love the countryside. They love how it looks. But they think in their heads, they think if we eat meat, we can save the planet by not eating meat. And I think they don't understand vegetables, or how kind of, you know, intensive vegetable production is quite bad for the soil. Without animals, it's, you know, so yeah, and it's just they just want the media says it, and I think it's a big problem. And for example, I was at a wedding on Saturday, 120 guests there in Cumbria. No one was vegetarian, and that's probably the other way, isn't it? But it's they all are chewing on their meat. But it's that, yeah, people from cities where most people live in built-up areas, and they just think that it's a bad thing to do. So
it was on Radio 4 this morning, though, about, you know, how to reduce our carbon emissions by however many percent by 2050, and it was literally like every year eat less meat. So, you know, it is very much the mainstream narrative, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, and there's a bit in the chat as well. Someone said about it in terms of engagement, and as you say, it's about resetting their belief of what a farm does or doesn't do, isn't it? That's part of it. Okay, so I was yesterday. I was interviewed by the local newspaper. We have a quarterly double-page spread on what's happening on the farm. So I have, yeah, we've had one. To be fair, the main of the spread was photos, but there was a very small picture of us and a really big picture of a cow, so that was fine. But that's partly the features editor is interested in getting farming in what is basically a rural or representing a rural area. There's nothing about farming, so we're trying to do that. So that's yesterday's job, and then again, and also hopefully hosting a farm walk in a couple of weeks. Again, partly that's for our existing meat customers, but just again getting people. And what's going to be interesting about that is a lot of them would walk past fields or walk through the farm on footpaths quite often. So it'd be interesting to see their reaction when they hear different bits about why we do that. And so yeah, it'd be interesting to see. So, but yeah, so there's something about how do we engage. I suppose it's engagement still, isn't it, in terms of with different people. And
yeah, and I think it's just having lots of conversations and being very open about stuff, I think. Because it's like with our chickens, they go to 12 weeks and then people are like, oh, just 12 weeks. And it's like, well, the reality of most chickens is a lot less than that. So it's, yeah, just plenty of conversations, I think.
Okay. We need to invite some vegans. Maybe that's not my best idea I've ever had. Anyway, on that note, we'll introduce you. So John, Nick, tell us about yourselves. That's a horrible question. Why? Firstly, we should say where we met you or got talking to you was Groundswell.
Yeah.
And but you'd been engaged or knew of Nick through Instagram and particularly interested in Renault's haircut.
But they were so cool, these two. Like we were at Groundswell just looking like downtrodden farmers, and then these two were just, well, I was, Liz, I don't know about you. These two were just like these cool hip chaps. And they recognized us from Instagram, which straight away I just loved them.
Yeah.
And we talked about foxes, I think, didn't we? Foxes and chicken egg. Yeah.
Well, actually, Liz had some very trendy sunglasses on, if we're talking about being trendy.
That's true.
Very trendy.
I got them from Sainsbury's, so on trend.
And obviously, we've been watching your webinars and then seeing you on Instagram. And yeah, we actually came over to talk to you about how you were dealing with the predation issues on your eggmobile, because we've got an eggmobile and we're having big problems. So that's how we met at Groundswell.
And then Liz and I just pounced on you and thought, oh my word, these two are doing a lot of stuff and they will be perfect guests for this.
And particularly interested in the pig approach. So we'll sort of focus a bit on that and then go wider, I suppose. So in terms of, if terms go back to sort of how you started, because what's also intriguing is you're not necessarily from farming stock. So how did you get started in doing what you're doing?
Yeah, so we first generation, so neither of our parents are farmers. We grew up in a little village and our parents have got a little half-acre paddock, which gave us space to start our first little enterprise, hence the name of our farm, Paddock Farm. We got into it really through food. John and I have always been quite keen on our food and quite interested in how it's produced. And we wanted to have a go, basically, at producing our own food. So I think the first thing we tried was actually vegetables. And then we did raise a couple of lambs before we had sheep. But one of them died the week before it went to slaughter. So that was really disappointing. And then we thought we'd have a go with pigs because we were well, we've always liked pigs. And so this is to set the timescale. This is it about 13 years ago?
Yeah.
We got our first pigs. Yeah. So we did quite a lot of research into pig breeds and pork because we wanted to try and find a breed that was going to thrive outdoors in the sort of type of system that we felt we wanted to run, and also produce, we hoped, the very best pork. And looked at quite a few different breeds, but set on the Tamworth. Bought a couple of Tamworth weaners, which we raised. I went on a curing and butchery course with Hugh Foley Whittingstall and learned the real basics of butchery. And we had them back, and the pork was absolutely delicious. We were really blown away by it. And I know you hear the sort of cliched, oh, it's totally different from anything you can buy, but it really did feel like we produced something quite special. And we also really loved having the pigs around. They were such nice animals. So we thought we'd go to the next stage and buy a couple of in-pig sows. And again, we really wanted to stick to the pedigree Tamworth, so we sourced a couple of really nice in-pig Tamworth sows. They farrowed, gave birth to 16 piglets.
In total?
In total, yeah.
Not each.
And we were like, blimey, we can't eat all of these. We better, what are we going to do with them? So we tried selling some half pigs to friends and family. We tried selling some to a local butcher, and we got a friend who was a chef, and he bought one. And the chef, actually not so much, the butcher struggled to make a margin on it. Our friends who had bought them thought they were delicious, and the chef absolutely loved it. And he was like, when can I have some more? This is absolutely fantastic. And we're like, oh,
that was it.
That's it. And yeah, so that was the start of Paddock Farm. We then,
but it was very much that we wanted, if we thought that if we are going to eat meat, as we're talking about eating meat, we wanted to be involved in the production of it, and we wanted to find and make sure that we were doing it in like the best possible way in terms of animal welfare and the system. And so that was sort of the sentiment behind it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That we really wanted to, we sort of wrote it ages ago, like produce like the ultimate pork in the best environment possible. And so that's why we got involved. And we lived in the countryside, and we wanted to get involved in farming, and it's quite a hard thing to get into. And actually livestock is definitely an easier or a more of a natural way in on very small scale, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so then after that, Nick had a job. We both had jobs, and Nick wasn't very happy in his job.
You didn't have a job?
No, I didn't.
You've never had a job.
No.
You were at university.
I was at university. And
just tell us, can you just tell us a little bit about what you did before? Because I think it makes it even more amazing what you've done.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, I studied theatre at university, so drama and theatre arts at Goldsmiths College in London, and then went on and did a master's degree in set design at Central St Martin's. So yeah, completely unrelated in many respects, but it, at the same time, like we found it quite useful in terms of design of pig arcs, maybe,
Do they have moving in scenery as required?
Yeah. Well, and making, and then actually having contact with graphic designers for when we were setting up, the farm and the logo and things like that. And so, to be surrounded by creative people is never a bad thing in whatever you're doing. And so, yeah, I think it really creates a mindset that you can apply to anything. So, and I did do some things about meat production while studying theatre as well, but we won't go into that because it's a bit random. I did
I reckon now it would be looked on.
I reckon
I
actually
think
I'll get into a lot of trouble if I
Yeah.
did.
So
what
he
I
did
now.
a very, in a nutshell, he did a live performance piece, exploring the life and death of a chicken, and he brought everybody into a pitch black room, and there was a chicken hanging live by its...
No. I brought everyone into a pitch black room, led around the edge of it, and there was a real farmer from Warwickshire, who's just down the road from us, with his chicken that he's raised, you know, free range, stood in the middle. And then once everyone was in complete blackout, he wrung its neck, hung it up, and then walked backwards into the crowd. And then we slowly brought up just like a little light bulb, so, you know, everyone could then see what they'd been part of. And it was called Meet. And I was sort of in southeast London with a lot of people that, you know, hadn't maybe experienced meat production, and I was trying to agitate a bit, and also let people experience the death of it, to try and sort of see where they sat with it. And so, yeah, you know, I was 22 at the time, and
slightly traumatizing, not for every anyway. Interesting, provocative piece, I should have said.
That's right. And then it got commissioned by Battersea Arts Centre to go there, and then Wandsworth Council wouldn't allow a live animal at Battersea Arts Centre, so it got cancelled, and that was it. End of my...
So it caused quite a lot of controversy as well.
Yeah, but it was strange. It was a few years ago, and it wasn't such. I think it would actually be a lot more of a problem now.
Mm. Anyway, that was
it was
a bit
far more.
Get out of that. Go.
There was a lot to it. It wasn't. I didn't do it just you know,
It
thinking.
wasn't like gratuitous.
No.
Let's kill something.
Not at all.
No.
And we did eat it. We had a dinner party the next night as part of the project and the performance and stuff, that people came to eat it. So it was.
That's interesting. What proportion of people could eat it?
Well, I only invited 8 people.
It was only a small chicken. Fair enough.
Anyway, sorry.
That was a bit of a detour, but yeah. So yeah, I studied theatre, and then Nick also went to university and studied slightly more relevant things than that. So
you then decided you were going to leave that world, your worlds, and then set yourself up. And
yeah.
So in terms of, obviously, you had a small paddock.
Yes.
How did you get access to land or yards or anything like that?
We went and asked a lady down the road, and it used to really piss her off that she had to walk her horse past our pigs. And she thought if she let us use her bigger field, then we'd move our pigs to her bigger field, and she could walk her horse past our little paddock without it annoying her horses. So that's how we got our first little bit of land.
A 3-acre paddock. And then after that, it was... So that was still a hobby at that stage, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we got to 5 sows and a boar as a hobby, but the hobby involved selling meat to restaurants, you know, on a very small scale. And that's when Nick wrote the business plan, and I was still at university doing my masters, and he rang me up and said, "I've written a business plan for a 40 sow herd. I think we can make it work, and I've got an appointment with the bank manager, so you better come home. We're going to go to the bank manager." So I did come back, and then so we did go and see a bank manager, and he did agree to lend us a small amount of money. We asked for more, and he said no, but when you've used this, come back and we'll see where you are. And then we basically went and knocked on the door of a lot of farmers and asked them if they'd rent us a field. And they all said no. But one guy said, "Well, I've got some woodland. You could maybe rent that." So actually, year 1 of Paddock Farm, the business, we actually ran pigs in woodland. And then we quite quickly realised that was great, but you needed to rotate them through the woodland and not sort of set stock them in the woodland, otherwise they would, over time, once they'd cleared all the undergrowth, cleared all the brambles and etc., then they would actually start to want to eat the bark off young trees, which was completely not what we wanted to do. And then actually after that, a neighbouring farm had sort of seen that we were serious and we weren't just playing at it, and so he offered us to sort of be part of his arable rotation. So initially on a 20-acre field, and that moved every year. So we moved every year, and then he used us as a break crop basically. And then we ended up on a portion of his land which was a little bit away from everything else. And he was sort of like, well, to be honest, do you want to manage your own rotation down there? And so we ended up having 60 acres of him that we managed sort of the rotation ourselves. So that's how we ended up accessing land. And then he actually handed his notice in on the land.
Yes, so he was a tenant on this land, and he was subletting it to us, actually without the landlord's knowledge or permission. So when he gave notice to the landlord, we had a very difficult conversation with the landlord's agent, who was like, "Who are you and what are you doing? You shouldn't even be here."
Squatters' rights.
Yeah, we're like,
Oh dear.
yeah, I'm really sorry. Can we stay? And he said, well, we've got a lot of tenants, a lot of very good tenants with relationships, and we'd rather look after our own tenants. And we asked if we could write to the landowner who owns an awful lot of land around here and explain what we were doing. And we did. And the landowner was receptive and has given us a farm business tenancy on the block of land that we were illegally using, which is good. So that was.
Did you bribe him with bacon or something?
No.
No.
He does buy stuff off us now.
He does now, yeah.
But we just wrote him a nice letter, sort of told him what we're doing, and also did say if we're not there, then we haven't got anywhere to go.
Homeless.
We're homeless. And in fairness to him, he said it would be nice to support some new entrants, so he did.
Oh.
So
that's
quite
good.
a lot of it was, I know quite a lot of it was from a bank, but a lot of it was also kindness of people, wasn't it? Or you chancing it. I don't mean chancing it, but asking.
Yeah. So no, we haven't for many years we didn't have much security on anything. So land, we were sort of hand to mouth year to year, and then yes, we did manage to get a tenancy in the end. And the first butchery again was another farmer sort of sticking his head over the gate, telling us that we were doing it wrong and we should do it like this and that. And then actually became really helpful. And he'd got like a cutting room on his farm, and he was wanting to slow down and sort of semi-retire, but still wanted access to the butchery. And so he invited us in to sort of have it as a bit of a shared space, which actually was a really incredible opportunity, because that was the one bit we hadn't got in-house at that stage. We were raising the animals, selling them, delivering them, but we just weren't doing the butchery bit, and that enabled us to take the butchery bit in-house.
So just going back to the business plan, how accurate were you, Nick, with your predictions?
Well, I think we thought we'd make money quicker than we did. We kind of knew from the beginning that in order to make a small herd of Tamworth pigs stack up, we needed to get decent money for the end result. And so we worked out that we needed to make sure that we were going to sell carcasses. We're going to get back £300 for every carcass, basically. And we weren't going to be able to do that selling it to a butcher or any sort of a middleman. So we worked out fairly early on that the only way to make this viable was to take it straight to the end user, and that would either be individuals or chefs and restaurants. And I guess we, as John said, from the beginning, we really wanted to produce something really special. And so it actually sat quite nicely with us to be able to speak to chefs in nice restaurants and sort of say, look, we're producing something really special here. Are you interested? And I think we were really lucky. We were at the right time and in the right location. We're in Warwickshire, but we're pretty near the Cotswolds, and there is a lot of nice gastropubs who like to source well and can afford to, because they charge the right price on the menu to be able to source well. And so we approached quite a few chefs, and fortunately we had quite a few restaurants come on board and buy all the pigs, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we had a really lucky early shot. It was literally going around knocking on doors and cold calling, and it was really difficult to do. It's not something that either of us enjoyed, but we cold called Le Manoir Cat Saison just outside Oxford, Raymond Blanc's flagship restaurant. And I don't know how, we were just, it must have just been lucky. We cold called the reception. They put us through to the kitchen. I spoke to the executive chef, told him what we were doing. And he said, bring some sausages in, come and meet me. And so I went to Le Manoir and met the exec chef and did a really, really scary tasting in the kitchen. I've now been to lots of restaurant kitchens, and none of them are as grand or as amazing as Le Manoir's kitchens. And had to stand there with this brigade of chefs doing a tasting of our sausages. Anyway, they liked them and they started buying them, and they bought them ever since. So it was a really nice early thing where we had a really good referral there. And we could sort of say that when we could tell other chefs that we were supplying them with our breakfast sausage, it was an absolute But we were just a bit, we did just pick up the phone a lot to kitchens, and it was so scary. We used to have a script that we used to use as a crib sheet, and it's only because we were so scared making cold calls. It was horrible.
But do you think part of that was because you were young and in debt, and what was there to lose? Yeah, I mean, you got nothing to lose, and we did have debt, and we had to make it work. And at times, it felt huge pressure when you're raising these animals. And I remember walking through pig pens, and going, "Oh my God, how are we going to sell all these pigs?" And that's it. At times it was pretty stressful, and it does make sure that you've got the discipline to sit down and make the calls.
And there's a couple of questions sort of more on the pig side. So if we want to, should we move on to, can you talk us through your pig system now then? So you've got, I suppose, moving from, so the piglets are born, and then what happens, or wherever you want to start.
Okay, so the pig system now, obviously it's developed a lot over the years. And so sort of just a little bit of background on that. When we first started, we were going on to actually wheat stubble to set up pens behind the arable farmer, and so we've learned quite a lot from doing that, and knew quite quickly on that we needed to be going onto grass, not onto cereal stubbles, to have any chance of keeping, obviously, ground cover. There is no ground cover after wheat, is there? So now what we do is we have them, we basically have a grass lay rotation, which we use herbal lays as our sort of grass mix. So sort of we have some ryegrass species, and timothy, and cocksfoot, and chicory, clover, plantain. And then we have, so when the piglets, where do we start? So piglets are born, and the sow, we create our lactating sow pens. So they have their own pen, their own piglets are born, stay with the sow for 7 weeks, and then they're weaned. And we do it in a nowadays we have a batch farrowing system, which is way more efficient than we used to just sort of have them giving birth every couple of weeks. But now we are on a 6-week batch farrowing system. 6 weeks? Yeah. So every 6 weeks we have 10 sows that give birth, and then they all give birth basically within sort of 4 or 5 days of each other. Piglets stay with the sows until 7 weeks. Then we wean the sows. piglets go off to the porker pens, and the sows go to boars. So we have enough boars to do natural service. So we have 1 boar to 1 sow, natural service. And then they stay, the sow stays with the boar to make sure that she's in pig. So for 1 cycle. So in effect, she gets 2 chances. And then all the sows are grouped together at that point and put over into our dry sow area. And so in the dry sow area, there'll be around 20 dry sows at any one point. So you've got about 20 dry sows out in the field. You'll have, and then you'll have 10
sows lactating.
10 sows lactating, 10 sows of the boar, basically. And so the dry sows are the interesting one in terms of, well, where we've made the most development in terms of their sort of grazing ability. So we are running them on, in effect, a mob grazing system. So which we've taken, so we've got cattle as well, which we do daily moves with mob grazing. And so we're using the same infrastructure as we have with the cows for the pigs. So we use Kiwi Tech fencing, and we've got them down onto, they have a double fence perimeter. And then the actual, all the sort of daily moves, so the cells that we move them into are all single strand. So we've got that set at optimum pig height of sort of nose, which has taken a bit of getting right, because if you're going to work on a single strand with a pig, you know, it has got to be exactly the right height. And then they're on every other day moves. And so they do get compound feed, but whereas before, when we were sort of set stocking sows in grass paddocks, which sadly would only say grass for, you know, sort of 4 or 5 months, we're now, and they'd be on 2 to 2.2 kilos a day of compound feed. Now, with the amount of grass that they're going on to, with them, they're on every other day moves. We've got that down, depending on the grass growing season, between 700 grams and 1 kilo of compound feed a day each. So that, for simple, it's gone from 2 down to 1 kilo a day of feed, which is a massive, obviously, reduction in compound feed, and means that we're less reliant on bought-in inputs.
Let me just interrupt a second, which is one of the, being less reliant on bought-in inputs is one of the main reasons that we tried to borrow these mob grazing techniques from cattle and transfer them to the pigs. And so, as John said, they're on herbal lays, and they are grazing a quite significant amount of cover out of these paddocks, and they're you know, how far we can take it, but how far we can cut back the compound feed and increase the forage, we're not totally sure on at the moment, but we've got it back to 700 grams a day, which we think is a pretty good start. So they're grazing these herbal lays and maintaining really good body condition, and the litter sizes and all the sort of key metrics, there's no decrease in at all. So we're really excited by this sort of transferring of mob grazing techniques onto our sows, and it works.
I can see in the little thing it says Tamworth diggers, how do you manage soil health and carbon release? So that's what's really interesting about our sort of journey of trying to keep pigs above ground instead of digging. So what we I think it's really like, this is my thoughts, by the way, I'm not saying this is right, but if pigs are really clever, so they they really like sugars, and so some people will train them to juices and stuff to be able to train them to move them around. So if you've got really lush growing grass ahead of them, then they're far more interested in grazing that than they are digging. But once you get into the season, or if you let your grass get too long, and once the energy has maybe, so you've got your grass growing, and then you've gone to your seed head, and so the energy is then transferred back down into the roots, and the sugars are in the roots. The pigs, obviously with these noses and their senses, know but that's where it is. And then they dig out and they'll dig the roots up and eat the roots. And so actually in the last week, and we found this last August as well, like this is a really challenging time because grass growth around here has slowed right up. And so some of it's gone to seed as well. And so they're quite keen to potentially try and dig over ground right now. So the way we deal with that is by making sure they keep moving. So like, we don't now go from every other day moves, we move every day, and you've got to keep them moving and try and get back round to the cycle and get them on some greener grass.
So there's been a couple of, so you're tending to move them in what, 3 weeks, they back? Are you doing
Well, no, I can see some of these questions. So Neil Johnson has asked stocking density. So we've got 20 pigs in a cell, and the cell is they're about 0.2 of an acre. They're 0.2 of an acre, and we're moving them every other day. And in terms of rest period, we've got enough space to give them, it can be up to a 70-day rest. We at one point, so we've done, excuse me, we can either run them, sorry, on half the field and give them a 35-day rest, or run them on the whole loop and give them a 70-day rest. And when grass was really growing fast, in order to keep the green stuff ahead of them, we gave them just half the field and we grazed off the other half with the cattle. Because as John said, we found it's really important to stop, like if once the grass goes to seed and stops growing, the pigs aren't as keen on it.
And interestingly, in Newman Turner, in his fertility farming or fertility pastures, whichever book you look, of his, back in the, what was it, 50s, 60s, you know, he says in that book that your dry sow can live on a herbal lay alone with no cereal input. We haven't quite got to that level, and we're not, you know, obviously we've got to look after our you know, body condition and then piglet numbers and viability. So, you know, I think it's maybe, you know, over the years we can look at reducing it, and as long as body condition and they get back in pig and they keep having good litters, and that's fine. But, you know, obviously we're being slightly careful about that.
And there's a question about soya in terms of what you do put in. And have you reduced your soya use as well, or what's your thoughts on that?
We use GLW feeds for our compound feeds, and they have now got a soy-free ration for sows and finishing pigs. So we now don't have. We do buy a grower ration for piglets that are weaned, so sort of 6-week-old to 10-week-old piglets, and that's still got soy in it. And the question really is, like, is there any point even feeding them that? You know, because could we just put them straight on the finisher ration? And this is something, when you're talking about native breeds of pigs, actually, like, how well can they use these high levels of protein that are in some of these compound feeds? And so if you ask a feed mill, then they'll probably give you like 4 rations to take your pig through. And, you know, is that necessary? We didn't used to use a grower ration when we first started. We just had one bag of feed, you know, one type of feed for everyone at that stage, you know. And then we got a little bit smart and complicated, and then we are sort of reining that back in. And I think really the easiest way to get it out the ration, instead of trying to get the feed mill to take out the grower feed, is to stop using the grower feed to start with and see how they respond to it and see if they do okay. And if they do, then happy days. But I think what's really interesting is that we sort of felt that we might have been a bit on our, like, oh, you know, how do we get a soy-free ration, like blah blah blah. And then we actually spoke to the feed mill, and our feed rep was like, oh yeah, well, you know, everyone's asking for this now. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, producers who are going to be supplying Morrison's next year are going to need this. And you're like, really? Oh right. And so we can buy it in bulk from GLW or in bags or whatever you want, and it's there, which is quite exciting, I think. Because I don't think it wasn't there a year ago, was it?
No, it wasn't. One of the sort of catalysts for us starting on our efforts to sort of engage in regenerative practices was going to a Sustainable Food Trust conference a few years ago at Fir Farm, and we spoke to somebody from a feed mill there, didn't we? Who was
Yeah.
talking about pig rations and their reliance on soya and etc. But the tide has turned, and always turning, I hope. And there are, rations are now being produced by the mainstream. GLW isn't a niche operator, producing decent rations that are soy free. And I know that when we are looking at our whole system, we can go a lot further and need to go a lot further. And feeding pigs compound feeds bought from GLW is not the end point, and it's not like we can pick holes in our system all day and identify things that might not be that aren't regenerative, but we're trying, and we'd love to be able to develop our rotation. And I think there's no moving away from growing pigs needing a reasonably high quality protein. But if we could produce that locally as part of a rotation that engages in regenerative techniques, that could be really, really exciting. So I see some of the questions here, and I would say, we aren't at the end point, and we mob graze cattle as well. And we can look at that. I can look at my system of cattle grazing and stand by it and feel so proud, and look at the what I believe the environmental benefits that we're yielding from our cattle are. With pigs, it is more of a challenge, and we're trying to work it out.
But the big challenge that you kind of maybe doesn't sit is having to buy in feed all the time, isn't it? That's the bit that's the tricky bit with the pigs. And
it is,
so,
yeah.
And just one point about this mob grazing pigs. So we obviously with the cattle, they have their water trough moves every day with them, and they don't need shelter as such. Whereas the pigs, we still do provide arcs and static water. So we run a lane system with the pigs that goes up the middle of the field. So in effect, we do lose cover down the middle of this field, which is in effect a track. And that track and that lane just gets extended out every day on a Kiwi Tech reel and then reel back in. So it's sort of all movable, but we do that. And then the pork pigs, in terms of how we're running them on the grass, we've gone from probably set stocking in too small an area to then trying to rotationally graze them. So give them a bigger area and then split that into 3 paddocks and then rotate that. So they spend a week on a paddock, then move, spend a week on another paddock, then move, and then keep going around. But it's quite a challenge to get quite small pigs to respond to that. And it's required a lot of more like double-stranded, sort of semi-permanent electric fencing compared to the sows. So that we did that all last winter, and we kept the ground cover for a lot longer than we'd ever kept during a winter with pork pigs, right through till January, and then it got a bit muddy. Then the weather just kept on raining. But this summer we've been running them on quite large paddocks, sort of 2-acre paddocks with sort of 80 pigs, and that's worked a lot better.
Yeah. And
we're slaughtering out of a pen at the moment that has complete ground cover. We haven't got any problems other than around the water trough, which they've obviously created a massive wallow. So there's that.
So I'm just thinking, when your sows come out of their cells, oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
How does that look in comparison? How is the ground conditions in comparison to how a mob of cattle would leave it? How much rooting do they do?
None. So they should be doing none. Yeah, none.
Wow.
Obviously, but
so they're just like grazing like cows graze.
Absolutely. And they do actually. They really take they take it right down. They are also pretty good at eating the docks as well. And so no, it looks like the cattle have been in there.
So this herbal lay we are running as a sort of as a semi-permanent thing. So we want to be able to, that we've got a little group of cattle which we keep there at the pig ground, and we do use the cattle as a bit of a tool to work in amongst the pigs. And this we want this herbal ley to be fit for feeding cattle as well as pigs. And if there's rooting, in our view, then something's going wrong. We need to try and sort it. But that is most challenging at this time of year.
And then, so we obviously, you get a bit freaked out by the rooting when you're trying to stop it the whole time. But then you do have to take a little bit of a view on it. So there's one paddock, one little cell, and they root the same circle every time they go in them. So what are they doing?
Perfect circle.
Root this perfect circle. And so, you've got to give it to them. They know more than we do, and they're getting something out of it. So you've got to
fairy rings.
And then the other thing is, every now and again, I saw one rooting. I was like, "What are you doing?" Having a look. I was like, "Oh, it's eating a dock root." Oh, fair enough. Like, I'll let it off. So you've kind of got to take a little bit of a view. You might, if you got a contractor in to mow it, they might be a bit, "Oh dear, it's a bit bumpy." But if you're not doing that and you're grazing it, it's absolutely fine. But we must say for people to hear that this is not, they're not going to be there in the winter on this herbal ley. So that is, you can't, you can run them, but we will be taking them off when ground conditions get to a stage where we are like poaching or they're like absolutely ripping it up. Then we've got a winter forage paddock for them to go onto. So that's important. And sadly, that's been a real failure this year. Drilled in the spring, and we've grown a load of.
It was so dry at drilling.
We've grown like ReGenAg, the weed, an incredible crop of it. It's beautiful. And we had drilled basically a winter forage crop, which was stubble turnips, vetch, buckwheat, barley, and chicory. And the crows, so we put the buckwheat in to protect the stubble turnips from the flea beetle, and the crows love the buckwheat and picked it all out. And then the flea beetle then had the stubble turnips, and we're left with ReGenAg and clover mix. But we've actually just topped it because we're
chicory.
And chicory. Sorry. Yeah. Chicory, yeah. So, we've got a bit in there, and we will put them on that this winter, even though we've lost, it's not quite got the cover we want. I think what's important with doing pigs outdoor all year round in this system is you might need to consider the sacrificial area for winter. And if you're talking like you're running pigs over 60 acres and you've got 3 acres that is sacrificed in the winter for your sows, then it's not too bad. So I think you need to be up for that.
And over winter, we will keep them moving as well.
Yeah.
And so we're not anticipating much to be left in the way of cover after they've been over the ground, and the ground will look a bit poached, I'd imagine. But we're not talking about massively rooted, desertified ground.
No.
So it should be very easy to rectify it in the spring.
I'm just looking up how much protein there was in a ReGenAg. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
And then unfortunately also I googled the bird, which was not what I wanted. Anyway, but it's just because it's buckwheat, isn't it? So it's all dock buckwheat type relation. So yeah, it should be interesting. But there's a couple of questions, and one I had, which is, how much do you think genetics will play a part in selecting the pigs that cope in that lower input system?
Yeah, very much so. Very much.
So is that, so your part of your selection criteria, I suppose, is it's indirectly selecting, because anything that doesn't get in pig under your system doesn't stay in. Yeah,
but also like we're starting from, I hate to say it, it's the best of the native pigs anyway. So well, no, let me tell you why though. So and like people might say this is a bit of a story or whatever, but Tamworth pig is from the middle of the country, so it's the furthest away from any ports, and it was the ports where the pigs came in from other countries that then got crossed with pigs that gave them more like squatted noses, whereas the Tamworth is in the middle of the country, kept out in the woodlands of the Midlands, and so it very much resembles the English, or what would have been the English wild boar. So it's got the long snout, so it can root, but it's got the pricky ears. It's got like the hardy nature, and it is absolutely, if you want to keep pigs outdoors on a low input system, they thrive on it. They're as hard as nails, aren't they?
Yeah,
absolutely hard as nails, and they're very resourceful with how they, you know, get on with things. So they are good, very good.
But yes, we continually try and select the right replacements to suit our system. Some of it will be natural fallout, as you say. If they don't get in pig, then they're not being kept. And we constantly, you know, look at metrics such as litter sizes and number of litters per year, and et cetera, to try and identify the best pigs which we rebreed from. And hopefully, as we go further and further down this system, we'll have better suited animals for it.
Yeah.
And we talked a bit about your soya free. Do you know what is the protein source they use instead of soya in your diets?
Well, it's on the label as peas and beans. So specifically what form that is.
So, but in terms of it was like to be UK grown, it's not they've just replaced it with another imported protein source. It's they just have replaced the soya with something that isn't quite so political, I suppose.
Yeah, I know that this is not our one, but they're also using sunflower seeds, which are French, but not in our one. But there is another soy-free pig feed out there that are using that as their protein source. But then, like people like Fred Price down in Somerset, you know, he's doing really cool things with grass-fed pigs as well, and he's making his own mix, you know, peas, beans, and silage, sort of mixed as a total, you know, in a mixer wagon for his finishing pigs. So, you know, I think the thing is interestingly, like we've always had a pig-specific vet, you know, someone that really knows his pigs, because we started off as like quite specialist because we were just pigs, and you know, he sort of comes out and thinks we're getting a bit madder every year, but at the same time, you know, he's like, look, I think that we've really simplified pig nutrition, and we've done it for convenience. Like, this compound feed is so easy. And actually, there's a lot to be said for including more roughage in the diet and looking at alternatives for the pigs to go to the feed instead of taking the feed to the pigs. So, you know, even like, and he's a big pig vet, you know, and
it's a massive question for. Do you mean I did some training in pig welfare, and it's a massive question in terms of just the sheer level of boredom that exists in their life. Because when they are, it's like us eating 3 Mars bars a day, we get quite a lot of our energy, but it's what the hell do we do with the rest of our time?
Yeah.
So that's part of it, isn't it? It's part of that ethos in terms of high welfare, high environmental enrichment, all of that stuff. Plus, you're getting nutrition in.
Yeah.
It's not just playing with a stick because they can.
No.
It's actually going back more to behave like proper behavior rather than counteracting what we're causing, because we're feeding them small, highly dense feeds.
Yeah.
Small amounts, sorry.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm on a rant for a second. But I just and the other question, which is, and Nick and I have had this discussion before, and it could be that I'm also a mixed farm and produce feed. I don't think it necessarily is a bad thing that you're feeding cereals, but I think as Nick said, it's the source of where those cereals come from.
Yeah.
Because they are nutritionally packed full of things, aren't they? It's just the sourcing of them.
Yeah. And that's what we'd like to try and localize that more.
Yeah.
Really. So absolutely.
Wouldn't it be cool if your neighbours could grow your feed and you could have a little mill and mix?
So that's the hope. Yeah. And so we've the landlord of our cattle, where we've got our permanent pasture for the cows, is hopefully going to start. We're going to do a little bit this year, putting some beans in, and we're also putting in a vetch and oat mix to see how that comes up as a silage. So yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it. It is really difficult though, because well, it comes back to, you know, and it sounds awful, but it comes back to like a convenience thing as well. When you know, if we use about 8 tons of compound feed a week. And if you've got to handle all that, get it into a mill it, mix it, and then get it into some sort of way of getting it to the pigs, like, it's really difficult. And so it takes a bit of doing, and it's hard to move away from the convenience of a pig nut.
And I think that's relevant because we've diversified the farm a lot. So we ended up being quite specialized in the early days, because that was the way that we could earn a living and sort of, put ourselves out there as these guys that raise these really great pigs. But we came into it from a food perspective, into like nose to tail eating. And we were really, 13 years ago talking about, well, look, these pigs are like seriously free range, extensively free range, and exhibit natural behaviors, grown slowly and taste great. Whereas over the years, when we went to that Sustainable Food Trust chat, we were like, how are we going to fit into the regen movement with these pigs? How do we do it? And actually, we have cut our sow. We actually had an 80 sow herd at one point, and we've gone down to 40 sows and incorporated a lot of other elements onto the farm to replace some of that, obviously, loss of potential income from the pigs. But we realized that we were probably carrying too many pigs for what we were trying to do. And so, in the past, we have bought a lot of food, haven't we?
Yeah.
And so, and it's interesting, I think, because we started from scratch with cattle and went straight in, we are going to produce grass-fed cows straight up. And when you start from scratch with that objective, with a bit of knowledge, it's like, there's no transition. It's like, this is what we do. Whereas actually with the pigs, we have had to go on, we obviously they've always been outdoor and free range and et cetera, but to actually go to where we want to be in terms of truly regenerative, that very much is still a journey and a work in progress. And when you're dealing, like, we're not big numbers, but there's still quite a lot of pigs around. So it's not like, oh, let's just try it with this batch. Oh, there's only 12, there's quite a lot of pigs. And it's still what our reputation's based on for why people come and buy off us as well. So we've got to look after that.
And in terms of it, lost my track of where we were going. Sorry, in terms of, it was a really good question as well. I apologise. Might come back to
well,
me.
there's one question from Rob Howe about worm burdens. Has that been affected in any positive, negative way with the herbal lays? Is there any, what do you do with worms?
Well,
Yeah.
Historically, and we worm all of our pigs. Every pig is wormed. And historically, we've had quite an issue with worm burdens. And I think, as John said, we had 80 sows on our 60 acres and we were overstocked. And so I think we've got quite a worm burden. And I would really hope that running this herbal lay system is going to help a lot. But at this point, we do still routinely worm our pigs.
Yeah, so we worm the sows twice a year still. And pork pigs get wormed at weaning. So the issue with pigs is the ascarid worm, soil borne, and then it produces a little spot on the liver, comes up on your report as milk spot. And the vets in the abattoir are ridiculously harsh on it. So if there's any sort of scarring, then livers are getting rejected, and there's nothing actually there. But I think Rob's a vet, isn't he? Rob Howe?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's very into worms and beetles. He might reply.
So
have you got any dung beetles? That's the next question.
Not dung beetles, yes.
Oh, well, he'll be happy. He'll love you.
But it's quite interesting actually, because the manure of the pigs, that like the sows that are on this heavy, high grass-fed diet, is very different. It's a lot nicer to handle in your hand when you're looking for things.
But, and also when they're in those cells, do they, because I know pigs like to all poo in the same spot, don't they? So when they're in those, when they're fast moving, do they just let it go?
Yeah, anyway, spread everywhere. Yeah, it's not all in one.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
And
Remembered the question, which was about weights. What weight do you take your pork animals to?
round about 65, 70 kilos.
Dead weight.
Yeah. So
So
that'd be about 100
100 to 120.
kilos live.
We used to weigh them, but we don't anymore. We just cast our eye.
Just guess. You get it wrong. But I mean, I think actually that's we're really lucky because we walk through the pigs and we select the ones we're taking for slaughter and take them to the abattoir. And then the following day we pick up the carcasses and you get instant feedback. You know, how do the carcasses look? How's the fat cover? Are they the right size? Etc. etc.
And because you're doing it every week, and you know pigs grow fast, you can make adjustments quite quick. I did tell Nick off today because we had carcasses that were 55 kilos, and
so I hadn't done a very good job.
Oh, too hasty.
Yeah, he'd taken some little ones off.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, sorry, Liz.
no, I was just thinking we've talked about you've mentioned the beef cattle a bit. So do you want to just explain what you do with your cows?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I was reading Rob Hell's question as well. With the cows, so we've got 120 acres of permanent pasture, which we rotate them round. They're on Kiwi Tech fencing, daily moves. We've got Kiwi Tech water trough as well. Love Kiwi Tech.
We love it.
Love it. Yeah. Got thousands.
Got the quad mounted kit, you know. But that
you're hoping for some free stuff. I'm not sure that's going to happen. But
no.
Might do.
Right. But no, what it does though, the reason we love it so much is that we find it really quick and it's so flexible, and we don't have obviously there's permanent electric fence around the perimeter of our pasture, but other than that we work on each field on every rotation depending what it's looking like. Then we adjust the paddock size accordingly, and so we try and run them as one mob as much as we can. But obviously we have got some bulls, so we normally run our 2 bulls and some steers down at the pigs, because that's on a separate bit of ground. And so they're our sort of pig conditioning mob. So we use those to sort of look after the ground there. And then the main mob are all together. And obviously right now, because we've got the bulls in, we've got 3 mobs, but generally we try and keep them as much together as we can. And we don't outwinter yet. We rent everything. We don't own any land, it's all rented, and we have grazing licenses, and I think we're on heavy clay, so it's not that easy, but we were out until the 12th of December, and then we went back out on the early March. 1st of March.
Yeah.
And so we weren't housed for that long. And we are very much looking to develop a grass-based sort of genetics with the cattle. So we have been running stores for a number of years, buying in 12 months stores and finishing them for the butchery. But we've ended up with quite a few different frame sizes and finishing times. And so we are sort of developing our own sort of grass-based genetics on the farm, using traditional Herefords as sort of the dam side of it. And we've bought a lovely bull off the Brewster brothers in Scotland, which is very exciting. And we've got a bull off Simon Cutter in Ross-on-Wye, and so we're using those to try and create a smaller framed cow. So we're looking for carcasses to weigh about 300 kilos, and so we're not trying to grow large animals on the grass, and we want something that's easy fleshing and is going to put some fat cover down, and we want to be finishing cattle by 30 months. So with all of those, and we want to be calving at 2 years. So, we're...
And also from the butchery side, we want the animals to finish right with a decent fat cover. And I'm sure we're not alone in finding that a challenge to make sure we've got the right both back fat and intramuscular fat whilst finishing purely on grass. Can be a bit of a challenge. And when we compare it to the grain-fed beef and the beautiful marbling that all the chefs want to see, it's quite a challenge with the grass-fed to get them to put on enough fat. Basically,
we can get them to grow really well, but to get them to put on enough cover, we are struggling a bit. Not struggling a bit with, but I sorry.
Well, Andy Rumming's on the call.
Sorry, Nick.
Do you
just
not
cut out there? Can you repeat that?
think it's a bit of a kind of? Sorry. Yeah, I just see Andy. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
And am I there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Andy Rumming's on the call. He does grass-fed beef,
Yeah.
and I just wondered what he thinks. I think it's kind of talking to chefs to explain the story with the intramuscular marbling, and that it does come from grain, and that's not.
I think
it's a different product, maybe.
Yeah, to a point, I agree. But I think we can get the intramuscular fat. And I think what we really don't want to ask a chef to do is compromise on eating qualities to satisfy environmental objectives. We really want to produce something that is like the best tasting whilst also being net positive, if you like, to the environment. And I think it can be done with the right system, the right genetics, the right process.
And this is it, though. You've got to have the genetics for the system. And I feel that me and Nick might have bought stores out of totally different systems and then put them into this, and they don't quite work, and that's why I think we've needed to go back. That's why we're going, right, let's start from the beginning and try and go from there. And I think that, some, like, we actually get, like we can finish the heifers pretty well with a good amount of fat, and it's the steers that are slightly harder to do, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And is it partly also sort of going through and doing what you can do with maturing them for longer? I know that's not going to affect the amount of fat in the muscle, but it will affect flavour.
Yeah, but if you don't, you need the right type of carcass to be able to age it. And
we've got enough fat on the surface.
So a leaner carcass doesn't age as well. Anyway, and it can go a bit musty. Really.
So on the beef side, so it's sort of investigating genetics that can put that additional fat cover on and in the muscle.
Yeah, but I also think that our system, we are quite obsessively into mob grazing, and it might be wise, as some other people do, is to maybe let if you work out who your next 20 finishers are, to maybe let them run ahead and maybe take some of the maybe the better grass. I don't know, but then I don't really like that, because then I'm thinking about actually like cattle nutrition and then looking at their dungs, and you don't want them taking the tops of anything running loose. That's not what we're trying to do with the cattle. So like, we're getting good daily live weight gains. I just think we haven't always bought the right the cattle, but we have sometimes got the right cattle and they finish beautifully. So that's why we're going down, like, we need to work on our own genetics.
And I know between you doing other things, but I want to know why you didn't. I know your lamb died, but are you thinking sheep? Is there any interest in lamb in your system, or can you get it from elsewhere?
Yeah, well, lamb is something that we can get. We can buy really good lamb from neighbouring farms, which is a slight sort of disincentive, if you like. But yes, we're definitely interested in incorporating sheep. And back this spring, we nearly bought a start of a flock, and then we ended up buying too many cattle and ran out of money and couldn't afford any sheep.
It's probably a good thing.
It probably is lucky that we didn't at that time. But I think sheep are a really, really valuable part of a whole regenerative farming system, and a really useful tool. And we could have benefited from having sheep to run over some crops that we've been establishing that we haven't been able to do. If we had our own, that'd be great. Neighbour, good mate, and someone that we work quite a lot with has just bought 100 ewes. So it might be that he does the sheep bit, and we can borrow them when we want to use them as a tool.
Because we're going to buy his lamb off him. He's an arable farmer, and he's brought them onto his arable farm to be able to grow grass lays, as break crops to his cereals and improve soil fertility. And so we also feel like we could benefit from that sometimes when we're establishing new lays and things like that. So I think as a tool they're useful. And we sell a lot of lamb, but we are quite lucky with who we can buy it off, really. Sheep haven't really, there's so many things we want to do. I don't know.
Yeah. It's desperate to get involved in pastured meat chickens. And actually with the lamb we can buy and the neighbours who've got the right sheep, I think would be more interested in going down pastured meat birds as the next project.
So you've got eggs at the moment, or one?
So we've got an eggmobile built. It's literally Joel Salatin's blueprint. Actually, Andy Rumming imported the books.
So we've got him to thank for it. And then we built it very early this year. We built one to Joel Salatin's blueprint out of his excellent book.
And he says in his book, do exactly as I say. Don't mess around with it. It works if you do it as I say. So we're like, okay, so this time we will. And we actually did it exactly to his spec, didn't we?
Yeah.
And now want to change it.
And it did work.
It works really well.
We have had, this links back to when we first met, we have had issues with predation. And we love the eggmobile. And it's such a great story. And having the eggmobile following the cattle around, it's an amazing part of the process. And they do a great job. And it's a lovely thing to be able to show and tell people about. But we really don't want to fence them, and have lost quite a few to predation. We lost some. We bought 250 chickens to fill the shed in March, and on the second night, the fox came, and it's got a slatted floor. And the fox came up through the slatted floor and ate the chickens' feet and legs. And we got dead chickens and also live chickens with no legs and all sorts.
And so that was the first thing that obviously in Joel's blueprint he didn't mention. So we've had to modify.
But also just on the fox thing.
Yeah.
Just can you just talk briefly about the foxes with the piglets as well? Because I think we don't really have any fox stressed up here, touch wood, at the minute, but you have.
Yeah.
Lots.
So we have a lot of foxes around here, and so historically we've struggled with foxes with pigs, and so we've had them in previous years where we have foxes that literally learn the sound of sort of day-old piglets and that little noise it makes when it's trying to suckle to its mom, and it will just hunt down the electric fence line of our lactating sow arcs, and when it hears that, hops over, grabs a piglet, goes off, comes back, hops over, grabs a piglet. And so we've lost, last year was the worst we've ever had it, and we lost every single piglet in a batch over a course of a week, and we had people down there trying to shoot them, and it was just absolutely horrendous. But we've made, and so we've always had to try and control the fox population a bit around our pigs because we've always had that problem. And then so we've used rifles to do that in the past, which does work to a certain degree, but you never know when your next clever fox is going to learn the tricks of the trade and be in there. And so actually we've now got what they call fenders on the outside of our pig arcs, which I think now, I don't know, we're not part of any assurance scheme, but like if you're part of the RSPCA scheme, you actually have to have those anyway, because it stops your piglet walking out into the field as a day old and getting lost or whatever. And so we've got,
not that they do that,
but I think that's why they're meant to be there. But also works as a draft excluder down the bottom. And then we also use, we've built flaps onto the front of the pig arcs of just the lactating sows. So they're like the same flaps we've got on our fridges. So sort of see-through plastic ones. And that I was advice off our vet, and actually the fox seemingly doesn't like to go in when it doesn't have like a clear entrance out. So just this sort of physical barrier that's not even a physical barrier works really well. So the fender and the plastic strips have worked very well on the pigs, fingers crossed, this year. Yeah.
And then after onto the Egmobile, after our slight modification to stop the fox getting up through the slats, what we've now done very recently, which is really exciting, is we bought a dog to act as a guardian dog. So we bought a Marema puppy, who's now about 14 weeks. Yeah. And we're hoping she's going to be the missing link.
She is the answer.
She's the final piece of the jigsaw.
So yeah, that was a groundswell happening, actually. Really, we were talking about it with you guys at Groundswell, and then I went to the beer tent speaking to someone else who said, "Oh, on the PFLA forum, someone was advertising puppies last year," and then she found me the link. So I was like, I'm going to call this guy, and then I woke up a day later, and he advertised his next litter. So yeah, we were straight there, and we bought one, and we're training it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. She does live with chickens the whole time now in a training pen, and then I've been taking her down to the Egmobile during the day, and she's doing really well. So hopefully we will sort of graft her onto the chickens, and she will just live with them the whole time.
A simple question: how do you stop her eating chicken poo, or is it just my dog that does that?
I don't know. I haven't worried about that.
She doesn't.
Okay, it's fine.
Seem to, actually, at the moment. Maybe she'll get a taste for it. No.
And we've just got, I suppose, the last couple of questions in case people have got any others. The other one is we just mentioned your tomatoes. That's a new venture, isn't it, this year?
Yeah. So we've started a horticultural project now, and I think this is really exciting because we're trying to sort of really use the fertility that we're creating on the farm with the livestock to produce some nutrient dense vegetables as well. And so we've got a polytunnel which will also act as winter housing for our chickens as well, because the Egmobile is not very suitable for outwintering, and we're not going to be trying to tow around the field in the winter either. So we've got a polytunnel, which is, how big is it? I don't know how big it is.
I don't know.
15 meters by 3 meters or something like that.
No, it's bigger than that.
Is it?
Decent
It's big.
polytunnel. To us, it's big.
It's got sliding back and front doors.
It looks big. It looks very big.
It is. It's big.
But it's we're doing it as a no dig market garden. So basically, what we've done is we are composting the manure from the cattle sheds from the winter and using that for our market garden. And we tried to use our pigs as the pig aerators in the cattle shed this spring with mixed results, but it's certainly something that we'll continue to do, keep working on it. And then we are windrowing our manure and turning it, making compost, and then using that in the market garden. So this year we are growing, lots of tomatoes, cucumbers, salad, beetroots, caballonero, winter squashes, courgettes, beans. Yeah, quite a bit.
So that veg will go down to the restaurants.
So yeah, so we're sort of dipping our feet into it this year, and we actually thought, well, let's just put it through our butchery. You know, I'm sure we can sell it in the butchery. But then actually, the restaurants have been really excited and keen, as have they about the eggs actually. And so we've got a couple of very good local places. So we've got the pub down the road's actually a very good pub, and so he was keen. And then our friends run a cool cafe called the Straw Kitchen, which uses a lot of vegetables. It's quite veg heavy, and they were keen to be able to incorporate local growers into that as well. So, you know, right now we've got a massive tomato crop coming through, and so, you know, we have been offering it out to the restaurant. So we've sent some down to London,
Yeah, we did envisage it was going to be retail, but it's actually the chefs have been loving it, and
which is a bit of a theme to what we've done. You know, we kind of have managed to engage with chefs quite a lot throughout what we've done, and our retail is so key, and it's our shop front, and it's vitally important to what we do. And through lockdown, like, that's what has kept the whole business going really well. But the engagement,
it's really nice feedback with a lot of people, whereas with the chefs, you know, we speak to we supply about 50 restaurants a week, but you know, it's really nice retail. You get loads of people come in the shop and feedback. It's nice.
But what's great about putting the market garden in there and the chickens in there, because we've got vans that go out delivering, and now they are also, you know, like, to just do eggs and deliver eggs, it's quite a low, it's hard to stack that up. But if your van's going out and it's going to a restaurant, and then they've got 6 trays of eggs, that's quite easy. Or a tray of tomatoes, say, that's maybe £15, but it can go because the van's already going. So, you know, that's really exciting to us, that we've managed to start, like, stacking the enterprises on the farm.
Yeah, proper stacking.
Mm.
And
I've got one daft question, Liz. Sorry.
Oh, go on, sorry. Have you gone, Nick?
Bandwidth might not let you.
This is a very stupid question. Go
on. We just got stupid question.
Oh, I just can you hear me?
Yeah.
What is your very favourite cut of pork? What's your favourite pork thing?
Well,
a rib end chop.
I was going to say that, but it's obvious.
Yeah, but
it's too obvious.
It's so good.
Like, the first 3 chops off the pork loin towards the shoulder, so the rib end.
So you cut 5 bone shoulder, and then so rib 6, 7, and 8.
There you go. That's very specific.
Okay. God, they know their stuff, Liz, don't they? They're not just like a pork chop.
Well, obviously any pork chop's great, but they're the best. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
There's just a few sort of quick fire questions. So for completeness, okay, in a random order. How old are your cattle when you finish them?
Well, it varies, because we're on this bit of a hangover from store animals and having our own. So, you know, we've got
between 24 and 30.
Yeah.
But we just took one.
We just took a short one that was 3 years old. Just for various reasons. You know how it is. She was the favourite, and Kitty, who looks after the cattle with us,
wanted to breed from her.
Yeah.
Kitty's gone on maternity
leave. We've taken her to the abattoir.
She was too big.
Don't tell Kitty.
She was the wrong fret. We are finishing cattle under 30 months as a rule, as what we hope to do. But if we have a few go over 30 months, it's not the end of the world, because they're coming back to us.
There's a question about what type of wormers do you use on the cattle and the pigs?
We don't worm the cows as a rule. Pigs, I need to pass. Okay, we'll speak to you, vet. Pig fen is what we put. I'd need to tell you what. I would need to look into it.
I'd imagine.
But look up pig fen. It's in. We put it into the feed of weaned pigs.
And final question from the chat, which is, how many people work on your farm?
Well, we've got 2 full-time people work on the farm, but then we're quite skewed to that. Butchery is so labour intensive. So there's about, I think there's 12 of us all together. So there's a couple of delivery drivers, and then part-time delivery drivers, and then and
there's 7 butchers and a cook. 2 people on the farm, plus me and Nick, who go everywhere.
There you go. That's 12. Yeah.
There you go.
But probably equivalent of what, 7 or 8 full-time equivalents?
No,
there's
only
10.
Only the delivery drivers are
There's 10 people.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry.
And then there's 2 part-time drivers.
Okay.
But that's the reason we've got so many full-time people in the shop, is because, you know, we run a retail shop which requires between 2 to 3 people, and then we also sell to restaurants, which requires quite a lot of labour. And
we're slightly unusual in that the butchery side of our business has outgrown our farm significantly. So we do buy a lot. We don't produce all that we sell.
Well, we do pigs.
Yeah, we do pigs. But cattle is newer to us, and it'd be lovely in a few years' time to be able to supply all the cattle, but we don't currently. So we're not sort of a model of a farm shop whereby the butchery side is purely there to sell our own stuff.
It is a village butcher's shop as a retail space, and we do cook food. So pork pies, sausage rolls, pasties, shepherd's pies, cottage pies, lasagna, etc., etc.
Do you do any hazelnut? I'm a big fan of hazelnut.
No, we don't actually. No.
It's quite a Lincolnshire thing.
Yeah.
We've just been.
And do you two get on well together? You must do.
Yeah, we get on pretty well. Yeah.
No fighting.
No.
Not really.
Oh.
No. Occasional shouting. Maybe.
Some friendly brother bickering at times.
Yeah, more like that. He normally just takes the piss out of me, generally, for maybe my bad haircut or something, and that's about as far as it goes.
Got a marvellous haircut.
Thanks.
On that bombshell, as Jeremy Clarkson would say, but excellent. We're just on time, so I'd like to say a massive thank you to Nick and John for sharing all of that. Huge, lots going on, lots of experience. So it's brilliant. Thank you. And you never know what trouble we'll get into next groundswell. You've got a dog.
Oh.
I'm importing some sheep, so God knows what next year's groundswell will do. I've also sold a pup that I don't have yet. So the only last thing I just need to share is that since the last meeting, we've decided we are doing
Liz!
What? Have I frozen now?
No.
I don't know what she's up to.
I think you're going to say something she doesn't want you to say, and she's cut off.
No, we're doing a small gathering at the Carbon Calling site, which is up near Penrith, on the 6th of October. So it's going to be a small gathering of people, but we thought it would be a bit of a warm up, and our plan is to do the big Carbon Calling conference next June alongside Groundswell. So if people are interested, send us a message via Twitter or send me an email, and then we can book you on. Or send you more details, as it's a bit vague. So Nick, are you back with your bandwidth?
I think so. It's awful tonight, isn't it?
Is Rene watching some videos somewhere?
He is. He could be, but he's not, because he's on the tractor outside. I can hear him.
Okay, but
no. Well,
all right?
but thank you very much. Yeah, thank you so much. You are legends. You're just doing a great job, and I think I love your attitude, and I just think I want to be like you.
Oh, wow! Don't know what to say to that, but thanks. We're trying. We are trying. We're only trying. We're not.
Yeah, well, it's quite inspirational, and I think it's it's good to see. And it's also the fact that you're not there yet with the pigs, and you probably never will get there, but it's the journey to get somewhere near there.
Yeah.
And I think what's quite exciting, we'll stop talking because it's time's up, but we do have, our pig vet is quite commercial, but he comes around and he talks to us and he goes, guys, this is all starting, this is going to transfer over, what you're doing here. Like the bigger, more commercial outfits are going to have to start engaging in some of these things. So it's quite fun to think that we're doing something that's new, and then other people can learn from it.
Yeah. And you do a lot on Instagram. You are on Instagram, paddock_farm. Is that right?
I don't know.
I think it's paddock.farm.
Paddock.farm.
The key thing is to look for the orange pig, because there's other ones called paddock as well.
It's the orange pig. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
As ever, the recording will be up in the next couple of days, and then the next one, we'll do another one probably in about 6 weeks. So we'll keep in contact. But thank you very much.
Cool.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye bye.